Oh, God. Chinese overload. Barbenheimer Schmidt. His name was my name, too.
So what brings us here today? What?
Same thing as yesterday.
I don't remember what yesterday was.
Yesterday was today.
No, that's not right.
Yep.
That's not true. Don't mess with my brain. Not now. Not after
Phil?
Not after
Phil Connors?
Not after Chinese dinner.
Yeah, that was but rice in don't play. Gator don't play.
That was really good Chinese.
I'm in danger living as close to that place as I do.
ate the whole thing. Didn't think I would do that.
Yeah. It's not a modest portion. Like it's like a portion designed for tomorrow's lunch.
Yeah.
But
I just decided I'll just skip tomorrow's lunch and eat it now.
Yeah. Hey, your eater's prerogative.
Yes.
Yeah, this being Groundhog Day week, we find out this hellscape of cold we've been living in for God knows how long is finally over or not. So I figure we cite the good old Bill Murray, see if we can get some wisdom here.
Yes.
As to how to handle this.
Yes.
Because I think no truer story about the harshness of winter, except for maybe The Thing.
The Thing. Yeah.
But Groundhog Day, utter comedic classic from Harold Ramis.
Yes.
And I want to get into it through the course of the episode, but this was the movie that broke their friendship.
Oh, this one was it?
This was the one that did it.
Oh, okay.
This is if you want to point a finger of blame as to why there is no original cast Ghostbusters 3.
Yeah.
This movie is why.
This movie's why. Okay.
Yeah. And it was all behind the scenes stuff, so it's like watching the movie. You can't
See, I don't know the whole story behind that.
I don't think anybody knows like the full scope of the real story, but it was like, this is where they stopped talking to each other.
Okay.
This is where something about the creative differences or like things that were said between the two of them. Because Harold Ramis directed this, also had a small role in it as the doctor that he sees to get his head scanned.
Yes.
And their friendship goes back way back to Caddyshack.
Yeah.
When they both came out of National Lampoon. And yeah, it was rough because it was like their friendship was one of the comedic bedrocks of the industry. So when that kind of like bottomed out, it was rough for a lot of people. And I don't think that they spoke until Harold Ramis's deathbed.
Yeah. Huh.
And that whatever it was they did have some sort of reconciliation, but they didn't speak for years.
Huh. Didn't. Okay. Well, when we get to that point, unless we're at it now.
I mean, I guess I did kind of give the full scope. But, no, it was tough. Yeah, like especially Ghostbusters fans, that was tough.
Yeah. Okay, so it happened during Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
So for anyone who has never heard of the movie Groundhog Day, it's another masterpiece.
Also, who are you?
Also, yes. Yeah, what are you doing? This is one I've come to have. I'm back to a love relationship with it, but for a little time there, I had a hateful relationship with it.
Interesting.
Do you know why?
I don't, but...
You sure?
I'm curious as to why.
Because I'm positive you probably went through the same thing, no?
Probably
Maybe not.
Probably, but...
This was one of the movies we had to break down in school.
Yes. Yeah, okay, I see. Oh, yeah.
And we had to use the sequence method.
I hate it. I know exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I just was like, I can't.
It was one of those writing buzzwords that didn't mean anything.
Yeah, no, I remember doing it. It was narrative structure. That was the course. I think this was for narrative structure. Sounds like it was. And our professor brought in this new spine, this new playbook on how to write a screenplay. And it was the sequence method. And it was very difficult to get to work all the time. Essentially, it was stating that a normal film can be broken down into like 10 sequences of short films.
Yeah.
And each one little thing has its own arc, everything, and has to lead into the other. Okay, fair enough. That's fine. But when that was the only way to do it, that's where you run into some issue, I always feel, when it comes to writing. And I'll just say this quick and then I'll let it go.
Only a little bit of bitter hatred.
Well, just because like it was drilling one way and only one way. It's got to be this way.
Yeah. And
it can work for certain stories. It's a tool.
Well, it also comes back to like what was the original intention. You can't know that.
Yeah.
For sure, unless you hear it directly from Harold Ramis's mouth, you can't know that.
Yeah. And I highly doubt he used the sequence method to write this story.
Yeah.
And it once, and then as the course progressed and like the year after, then they decided, all right, we'll only teach it as like 1 week. Here's another approach, a different lens that you can look at the story.
Yeah.
It would be the same way of like doing Dan Harmon's story circle, which is great too.
Yeah.
But not, he made that for him to help make it better.
Because that's the way he writes.
Yeah.
You know, I will say that, like, sidebar for Story Circle, it's like that doesn't work for everything, but there are a lot of unique types of stories that's extremely helpful.
Yes. No, exactly. So once we all finally came to the realization that you can use any tool that you want rather than just one.
Yeah.
I became my relationship then with Groundhog Day became better again.
Yeah.
Because it was good in the beginning. Then there was that little period there I was like, God, I hate this movie right now.
There's something in Groundhog Day that, like the rest of like the core directorial pieces for Harold Ramis, that just stick with me, and it's like the Buddhism angle.
Yeah,
because he was a very devout Buddhist.
Oh,
like,
he was.
He followed like the practices, and like it infused in a lot of his work, his writings especially. But it was like this Multiplicity, Bedazzled, and Caddyshack specifically, like all had like these little like nuggets of like in Caddyshack, it was Bill Murray's lines talking about gunga la gunga and all that stuff.
Oh,
There's like little nuggets of things, and it's the opening in Groundhog Day with the clouds and like the atmosphere, like some kind of higher power inflicting wisdom down on this unsuspecting character.
Yeah. Or just like karma in general, or some sort of it almost, and that's interesting, I always kind of saw it as a different take on the Christmas Carol a little bit. He is a bit of
there's a lot of parallels
character.
with A Wonderful Life.
Yes. So yeah, and I just thought it was like interesting how it's, we'll do it on Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
And of course, again, if you've never seen the movie, he is stuck living the same day over and over again.
It is kind of the quintessential time loop movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's funny because it is such like a quirky, like towny comedy, but it is like very existential, like time theory movie.
You could easily turn this. In fact, probably I'd say for someone who's like new at writing or still even just journeyman level, the innate pull is to go with just make this straight dramatic and profound, and like you wouldn't even think to do like a comedy out of this story just based on the idea itself. Someone stuck in a time loop going, and they have to figure out why, and there's no one there to even tell them.
Yeah.
That is one thing, like you just pointed out, I really do like about this, that there's no character that comes down, or it
is the universe.
There is no
like,
personification of what's happening to him. There's no threshold guardian character.
There's no real intention ever given.
There's no true antagonist other than himself. It is literally just
it's like an entire movie about character development, which is kind of great.
It is just the universe, like you said, or so we think.
Yeah.
It's the fact that his negative attitude prior to being stuck in Groundhog Day has forced him into this prison now. He's going to be stuck here.
And I did look up at one point. It was like I was trying to find out, like, at least from like an intention standpoint, like how long roughly was he stuck in there? And there was a quote from Harold Ramis at one point from some, I think it was like a radio show or something he did, stating that it was somewhere along the lines of 10,000 years.
Yes. And that was weird because I remember, like, as I got older and I would watch this movie, I brought up that question. I was like, how long was he stuck there?
Yeah.
So I tried to count based on watching it, like every
purely
time,
like what's referenced.
Yeah, purely like what's referenced, even in the montage scenes when he's getting slapped around a lot, or by Annie McDowell's character.
Which, by the way, Annie McDowell in both the movies she worked with Harold Ramis is fantastic.
Yes,
and I think it's very clear that they had a good working relationship. But like her and specifically Multiplicity and this Groundhog Day, she was just, the two of them had a good shorthand.
Yeah,
really good.
Yes.
But I think Harold Ramis had a fantastic comedy career. I think that Bedazzled is a harshly underrated comedy.
Yeah, that's another one that I really
I think a lot of people don't even know that he did that. Because it doesn't stand out as
I didn't until you just told me right now.
Yeah, it doesn't stand out as like cut from the same cloth. But then when you look at it from that lens, it's like, oh, that really is like the same energy. And I think he and Brendan Fraser had to, and what's
Elizabeth Hurley?
Elizabeth Hurley, like they must have had a blast making that movie because it's so absurd.
Is it safe? I mean, obviously, I've never been on a Harold Ramis movie, nor will I. But,
unfortunately,
yes.
R.I.P.
But I mean, is it safe to say that like people enjoyed themselves? I guess not, because you said Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day, if any of them, is the anomaly because what we will never probably know specifics on. Some went down behind the scenes between him and Murray, and they didn't speak for years as a result of it. Like, it must have gotten real personal because they were close friends for years. Like they got famous off of both Caddyshack and Ghostbusters. They had like the same meteoric rise to fame. It's some went down. We probably will never know the specifics, but whatever it was bad enough for them to not speak for decades.
So like, did it happen? Do you know if it happened during it? Was it right after? Like,
my bet is the heat and meat of it was during production.
During production, okay. Like principal photography?
Yeah, because I know that in some ways it did impact.
Learning moment, for those who do not know what principal photography is. It's pretty, I think, self-explanatory, but that is in reference to the stage of film production where you are now on set.
Like the initial launch of production, and it's like where you intend to get everything, but it's like inevitably
life gets in the way and causes many issues,
or weather, or what have you. Something messes with it, and then you inevitably have to come back and do what's called commonly reshoots.
Yep.
Second unit. Sometimes you'll hear stuff like that.
But anyway, continue. Yeah.
So it was rough, and a lot of people were like. Not to get into a whole Ghostbusters thing, but in terms of the drama of it was tied to it. So a lot of people were hoping for Ivan Reitman and their team to get back together with the original cast of Ghostbusters and make a Ghostbusters 3. There was a script that Harold Ramis himself had written. Was fighting with the studio to try and get made. And because they couldn't get Bill Murray and him in the same room was kind of like the real crux of the problem of why they wouldn't sign off on it. And it was tough. It took a lot of pushing. Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis fought with that studio for years and years and years and years, and they just, because of the strife with Murray, they couldn't get him in the same room, and you have no comedic chemistry when that's the case. It's like the whole thing falls apart, and I get why they wouldn't sign off on it. So it was tough, and I know a lot of fans took it hard, but they eventually did make the game.
Yeah, I remember the PS3 game. It probably came out for a couple systems.
Which was doable because it was basically a voice acting scenario. They could record their lines separately. It was something that they could do and finish out the story. And often that game is regarded as Ghostbusters 3.
I really did enjoy playing that game. That was a very good.
It's good. I did like it too. I have it on the Nintendo. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. Anyway, how would
like I said,
could you make Groundhog Day into a game?
I actually really funny that you bring that up because I didn't know about this until like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
I looked into it. There is a Groundhog Day video game, and it
is
based on the original storyline. It is intended as a direct sequel, and I think it was funded by Dan Aykroyd.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the story of it is that it is Phil's son returning to Punxsutawney, experiencing the same events.
Okay.
It's very strange.
And you have to figure out, you could definitely do it. I mean, you could definitely do even just that concept of being stuck in a time loop.
Yeah.
And doing your own thing with it. I mean, has the time loop become cliche?
I think a little bit. Although there's some interesting uses of it. No tomorrow. Live, die, repeat is the tagline with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt.
Yeah.
I have a copy of it. I can't think of the title of it.
No. Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow. Thank you. I couldn't find it. Yeah, I think that one's a very unique take on the formula. It did something a little spicier with it.
Yes.
Like I was like, you can't just do a comedy.
So So going back to class again, digging back into our college days.
School us. Take us back to school.
I will say one thing I did learn that was interesting from that whole ordeal of the sequence method is we were given a script that I guess our professor had or knew somebody who wrote, and it was the same concept.
Yeah. Someone
stuck in a time loop, only they did it very differently in the sense of the time loop wasn't one day, but rather, I want to say it was like if I can remember, Ghost of a Chance, I think was the title of the script.
Yeah.
And it was something with, the trigger was I think kind of like Edge of Tomorrow, anytime they die, they go back to a certain point.
Which is a smart trigger.
Yeah. So
because then you have the threat of like,
yeah.
if you don't complete that circle, it's like you might actually die.
Yeah. What they could experience went longer. And like each time he died and came back, he would live like he was doing different things, living out different lives.
Yeah.
But I think there was someone else he met, a woman who it was happening to her too. I forget how it ends. But point being, it was a decent script. I remember reading it, but it came out, he wrote it around the same time as Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for him,
fell
like
completely under the
there's no way.
surface.
I mean, it never got picked up as far as I know.
Yeah.
But no, it was a good learning experience though, to be like, okay, how much even just the concept of the time loop can be taken different ways and how you can put your own twist.
Well, also too, like I think the range of emotion that Phil's character goes through this. Also, like sidebar. How great is it to see Pittsburgh in the introductory sequence of this?
Yes,
It's
that's it's one
of the main reasons I keep coming back and watching it. Just like to look at Pittsburgh in the 80s, the late 80s.
That would have been the early 90s. No, yeah, 93. Well, the movie came out in 93.
Okay, then it was 90s.
Okay. I mean, late 80s.
I appreciate the double check.
Yeah.
But in the early 90s, it's great to see, like, it's before the casinos there. It's before they tore down Three Rivers. It's before all that. So it's like, it's a totally different look at Pittsburgh, but it's cool. And the atmosphere of Pennsylvania in general, it's like they
do capture, really I think, even though I think
they did not shoot Punxsutawney for Punxsutawney.
No, I mean, it's not Punxsutawney where they actually shoot the movie, but yeah, they did capture that Pennsylvania feel. Like I feel like I'm in Western PA.
Yeah. Especially for it not being actually there.
Yeah.
And the cast of characters that they got to, I mean, they got some big names. I mean, around the time, Ned Ryerson is a notable actor. I mean, he's like been in Memento. He's been in a ton of stuff over the years. He's done a lot of cameos. He was in an episode of Seinfeld. What else is he? He's done a ton. But yeah, the range, but I was back to my original point. The range of emotions that Phil goes through, like the character development they put him through, it's like he lives every conceivable emotion on the screen of this film. And I think like for comedy to achieve that wide range of drama is impressive.
Well, and that's one thing I've always held to in terms of a writing principle is the best drama has comedy and the best comedy has drama. Like, I'm not like that's, I mean, that's nothing revolutionary, but that's one thing that's kind of drilled in your head when you're trying to learn to write, or at least take writing more seriously.
Well, I think too, like, in this specifically, it's like the sequence where Phil like snaps and he's like he realizes like he can't kill himself. He tries like kidnapping the groundhog. He tries every like most drastic, absurd
thing
human
that he
emotion.
can think of,
and it's just like it's
blah 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 blah. Punks are here and gobblers not.
Yeah. There's no way this is ever going to end. It's very enigmatic of like the human experience and like the severe existentialism that hits, I think, most of us at a certain point in our life where just life feels inescapable. You can't get the out.
No, I mean, yes, it absolutely. Whether or not you're, obviously none of us are stuck in a time loop.
Yeah, but there's a relatability to that.
That feeling of being trapped, I think all of us experience it at least once in our life.
Yeah. It's just like, I can't get out. This is it. Why am I stuck here?
Yeah. Even if you're just stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
You're just like.
Just sitting there seething.
Like I was today. I was like, oh God. There were 2 accidents.
Oh God.
You can't
catch a break.
I couldn't go the way you told me.
I saw you on maps. I was wondering.
Yeah. I couldn't go the way you had told me because there was an accident. So I had to go the other way. And I was like, all right, I'll go that way. And I was like, this is going to take forever. So I had to make another detour. You
went like 376.
Yeah. And then I came up Beck's Run Road and came back down that way.
That's not a bad way.
So at least I know there's a third option.
Yeah.
Doesn't add too much.
I would just say, like, at all costs, avoid Liberty.
Yeah.
It
was, it sucked. But anyway, getting stuck in something like that.
Yeah.
Stuck in debt. Who isn't stuck in debt?
Yeah.
I mean, like our entire generation is. But yeah, this movie definitely.
One of the things I took from that whole sequence of events personally was just like when you get down to that, like you just use that time to like develop a skill. Like he learns how to play the piano.
Yeah. No, and I always like that because at first, okay, there's that denial of like what's happening to him when it first happens.
Yeah.
Then it becomes kind of like fun and games. He starts robbing an armored car.
Yeah.
He starts.
He has the timing down to like a perfect
he
T.
he just eats anything he wants. He
Walking around in the cowboy costume.
he
dating every woman in town.
he does almost like a Seinfeld little bit where he goes and meets the one, I think the red hair Nancy, and he's like, where'd you go to high school? What's your name? Like Nancy's like,
Nancy,
okay.
Lincoln,
and he's
Taylor.
Yeah, got it. And he meets her again at the next day just to get with her, but he really wants to get with Annie McDowell's character, so he forgets her name. And she's like, oh, Rita. She's like, Nancy, whatever. And then he's doing the cowboy bit with the French maid. There is that progression of, I feel like all of us would kind of maybe have that. Then there's the misery where he's just
he gets into the self-loathing because he realizes that he is, quote unquote, I am a jerk, quote unquote. And he does come to grips with some of his personal traits and things, and like realizes, oh, maybe I am kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's like it's almost being stuck in that day. You're forced to look at yourself because no one else right now can really look at you. And that's what I always took as the thing that, obviously that's the thing that breaks it, when Andy McDowell's character Rita stays the night with him. And by stay the night, there's no hanky panky going on. They just fall asleep together,
throwing cards.
and I don't understand how sleep got all twist and tangled up together with that. But there was none of that going on. And I think that simple act of her staying and her wanting to stay with him
started the turn.
Well, that is what breaks the spell, if you will, him, because finally someone now saw him and he saw someone outside of himself, and karma, the universe, finally lets him out.
I think it was
this 10,000 year prison.
I respectfully, I have a slightly different view. I took it.
You.
I took it as like when he genuinely has an appreciation for life.
Yes, that's true. Because he does do a lot other things that day. He changes
the last
tire.
day he's there. He catches the kid, saves the kid from the tree.
Yeah, he's like, I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe.
he genuinely he becomes the life of the party, but not for his own glory, but because he wants everybody to have a good. He's genuinely enveloped in this town. He becomes very much a proponent of Punxsutawney, which is, I think, like the whole introductory sequence before the inciting incident. He is talking about how he loathes Punxsutawney and loathes doing this story. But then the turn and the change is that he fully appreciates this town and what it's worth. Yeah, he genuinely appreciates the town, and I think that is kind of where some of the soul of the story is, because that's where the ultimate change is.
Yeah, and he stops seeing life as a curse and more as a blessing. Yeah, finally,
he goes through the whole rigmarole of trying to kill himself and stealing.
Oh, and I think a key thing too that kind of starts that all off, or is the low moment for him, is he's trying to kill himself, all that, but him trying to help the homeless man, who is constantly,
and he genuinely gets hit hard by that.
Because he tries to. He's the one that always tries to help him, but he never can.
Gets hard down there at the bottom.
So those are great little scenes. And that character never has a single word in that whole movie. I don't think he says one word. He smiles at him. He might grunt or say something. But no, that's
breathe. How hard is how I can't as funny as that movie is, that scene is tough to watch.
Even the scene, I really love Bill Murray's performance. One of my favorite performances of his in this is the first time you don't even see him, he brings him into the hospital. And the nurse says, "Did you bring the old man?" And he says, "Yeah, how is he?" He's like, "Well, he just passed away." And he was like,
"Not
like
today."
To see his chart. He says, "I'd like to see his chart." And excuse me, he just goes. There's that denial again. Of not wanting to deal with
death.
Death and
mortality,
that being a part of life. There's a lot of. I didn't know that you had said that Harold Ramis was Buddhist, so there's there's
a tie in there,
that circle coming through to fruition. So
and it's the full scope and appreciation of life. It's not even yes, the town is part of that, appreciating the town and all the people in it, but it's the grander scope of that is appreciating life and all that life has to offer.
Yeah, and it's not. It can't be by accident that they leave. I am curious, why did they pick Pittsburgh? Well, I guess if they're doing Groundhog Day,
I think it's just for proximity.
Just for proximity, but I'm pretty sure he wanted this to be another kind of the holiday classic to how Wonderful Life or Christmas Vacation eventually became for Christmas.
I think that the mundanity of the holiday itself, of Groundhog Day,
of February,
it is kind of
it's kind of a time of year where everyone's whatever.
It's why would anybody make a movie about that? But it's but it's perfect for this because the whole movie is about mundanity.
Yes. No, exactly. And it can't be by accident that they start the story in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Leave like the glamour of, even though maybe late 80s, early 90s, Pittsburgh wasn't the most glamorous place to be, but I'm getting like you're leaving that urban sprawl to come to the countryside.
Now that we mentioned the Pittsburgh sequence, it's really funny because I didn't even try to do this, but for 3 weeks in a row, we have topics that center around pieces that have a casting choice in it that relate back to Stargate. The dude in the glasses in the beginning, he's in a ton of stuff. I can't remember the dude's name, but
okay,
he is also
the one who says morning up to see the groundhog, that guy.
No, like in the studio in the very beginning.
In the studio. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
so he's in a very specific episode of Stargate where he plays somebody who comes to Earth from another planet, and he's producing the Stargate television show within the world of Stargate.
Oh my god!
So for 3 weeks in a row, we have a Stargate tie-in unintentionally.
Well, we will not have a Stargate tie-in next week.
Never say never say never. I can find one.
Anyway, yes, but yes, this is definitely one that we quote a lot.
Oh, big time.
Just here a little bit. Continue.
Most notably, the sequence where he steals Phil and like drives off the
Yes.
edge. Oh, he might be okay.
He might be okay. Boo.
That was my anthem of through 2020 when everything felt like it was just continuously getting worse.
Yeah, like it might be okay.
Car blows up.
It's not bad for a quadruped.
Check your mirrors. Check your mirrors.
Side of your eye.
Side of your eye.
Side of your eye. It.
Also, like the endless amounts of times that he and Doyle Murphy
Yeah.
were in movies together. I actually I love Bill Murray, but it's like there's something about Brian Doyle Murphy that like lights up. Like we talked about him in Christmas Vacation. That dude is just There's something about the dryness of his stare, like in Caddyshack, like the ending when the ball is about to fall in the hole. You just have that low angle shot of him just staring at it. Like stuck in my brain.
One thing I'm thinking about this now, like script wise. Again, I'm just going off my own generalizations and what I think. This isn't a history of necessarily what happened behind the scenes, or I'm sure this went through rewrite hell. Every script I feel like goes through like something like, I don't know.
Well, I know the non-linear nature of this production can't have been fun because they were shooting like every location specifically for all the events that happened in that. So it was like when
this would have been a principal production like nightmare.
So like
I feel like
like you'd be shooting like the Ned Ryerson street scene for like 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
Because like you have to shoot that out, and then
you got to do the different variations of what he's doing, but everyone else has to kind of play it the same way. Yeah.
The monotonousness for everybody who's not Bill Murray. This movie had to have been a nightmare.
What this one kind of reminds me a lot of. Have you ever seen, in terms of like the tone? I think this is one that kind of gets lost. Have you ever seen Joe versus the Volcano?
Yeah, a long time ago. But
with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan.
Yeah,
one of the. I think that's their first film together. If I remember,
was that a Nora Ephron or no? I don't think that it was.
I don't remember.
I don't think that it was. But
it has that same sort of thing, like stuck.
Yeah.
In it's that just mundane stuck in like Tom Hanks's character at the time works at this like soulless, like just like weird, like almost like a Tim Burton looking, like something that came out of like Edward Scissorhands or Nightmare Before Christmas, like factory. And I think eventually he's fired, or he's told that he goes to the doctor. He's like, you have brain fog or something, or like there's like a thing that's going to kill you in like a couple months. So you should just go live your life.
Yeah.
That starts his journey of one of the, like a rich, wealthy man tells him that if he jumps into a volcano, he can help people on an island. I forget, but I have to do that. I'm losing my train of thought.
That's okay.
But no, it was just like that same sort of appreciation for life, getting out of that prison. Yeah. And the style of it, the script, the story, they have similar feels to them, and they both came out.
Tuesday has no feel. This is a very oniony movie. There's a lot of layers to this, and more than I could probably cover in a short hour here. Mm-hmm. But I genuinely miss Harold Ramis like every single day. Yeah, that he was one of the true legends. It was heartfelt seeing him back on the screen for the Afterlife. Yeah. So I think that. I think a lot of people are not alone in just love of him, and like I feel he was taken from us too early. He died. Yeah. He had a slew of illness that he dealt with towards the end of life. And going back to talking about the drama of behind the scenes of Groundhog Day, and Ramis did meet on what I found to be his near deathbed, the specifics of which are not obviously public. That was very personal between the two of them. But those close to the two of them have said that they did reconcile before the end, but it was very much a too little, too late kind of situation.
Yeah.
Unfortunate because they were one of the great comedic collaborations of our time.
Yeah.
So unfortunate that we lost him. But I mean, we have some great pieces of comedy from him from over the years. I mean, just between the ones we mentioned, like Bedazzled, Caddyshack, Ghostbusters 1 and 2, obviously, and Multiplicity as well. Good stuff.
That's another good one, yeah.
Underrated as hell. I mean, prime Keaton. Keaton is at his best when he's the family man, in my opinion. Mr. Mom, I think, is one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah.
One of the best John Hughes, one of the most underrated John Hughes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. You want a beer? It's 7 o'clock in the morning. Scotch.
So if you were stuck in a time loop, if you were stuck in Phil Connor's situation, would you have, like, if that could actually happen to someone, would you have the wherewithal, knowing about Groundhog Day and the movie, would you have the wherewithal to...
My initial reaction would be the flapjack sequence.
The flapjack sequence.
When he takes the two drunk guys home. Don't drive on the railroad tracks.
Okay.
And then he orders the flapjacks from the two guys.
Yes, I'll take some flapjacks.
Is it too early for flapjacks?
That's where he's like testing. Yeah, he's testing the limits.
He's like how he's become aware that this is not going to change. And he's like really testing the bound. He like that the night before is when somebody mentions to him that he could do whatever he wanted, and that's where it snaps. And he's like, oh, I can. And he's like, I'm going to test the boundaries of this. And if in his mind, you can kind of see the let go offer. He's like, well, if there is a tomorrow and I have to pay the consequences for this, at least I get out of it.
Yeah, and that is an interesting thing because thinking about how the sequences of him trying to kill himself all the times over. I think the first one is he steals the groundhog.
Just walks down, gets the toaster, no emotion.
Yeah, there's another one, gets the toaster, no emotion.
Jumps off the top of the clock tower.
Yeah. What's the other one he does? Jumps off the clock tower. There's another one. Oh, he tries to get hit by like a truck.
He just steps right in front of a bus.
Yeah, steps right in front of a bus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there another one I mean, I get you're supposed to insinuate he tries it multiple times. There's some that he mentions.
I have been shot, stabbed, hung, electrocuted. There's like, he goes through like 15 of them.
Yeah.
Like,
that's interesting because it's almost like from a writer's perspective, it's like so many movies and even good ones too, but bad ones, but like it's kind of a crux you want to lean on to like just have the character's journey end in death.
Yeah.
That's always like sort of like and then the protagonist dies or something along those lines. It can be too easy of a net to fall into to end your story.
Yeah. What I like about that sequence in this specifically is there's not a lot of iterations of storytelling that like take the sting of the existential nature of death out, and I think this is one of the great examples.
Yeah, no, I like too how it's almost a way of saying, no, we're not going to go down that road. We're not going to take the easy way out here.
Yeah. Even
from a writer's standpoint, but even as the character's standpoint.
Think of how many stories just rely on the finality of death in some way, shape, or form. It's like, come on, there's other ways.
Yeah, and I like how whatever force is doing this to him is saying, no, you don't get to... You get to live life, but you just got to do it right.
Yeah.
Or you got to... It's a life-affirming story, which I really enjoy.
Yeah. And the whole love story, too. Every aspect of this story is changed by that fundamental principle of there is no other way out. You have to do it right.
Yeah.
And the love story specifically, it's like he tries to cheat his way through it.
Yep.
And then you can't just learn the bullet points. You have to like...
Actually,
you have to feel
that genuine connection. And you could tell based on the first time he like tries to quarter Rita, and you could tell he is just kind of going through the emotion. The motion, sorry.
No, but yeah.
He's the snowball fight with the kids.
Yeah.
And like it's not genuine.
They're standing in the
it's a means to an end. Yeah. It's a means to an end for him both. Maybe because he just wants to sleep with her, but also get out of what's happening.
Well, it's all like I think it's like an impossibility thing for him. It's like he's told he can't. She's too difficult of a woman to woo in his typical fashion. Yeah. So he takes it almost as like a personal challenge.
Yes.
So
and then when you juxtapose that to the final sequence of when she's there with him, his demeanor, his way of looking at it, he actually carves like her face in the snow.
Yeah.
You know,
he learns to ice sculpt with the chainsaw.
Yes,
too.
yeah. And that's just, I mean, that right there is a dead giveaway that he's been stuck in this day.
Yeah.
for a long time.
And I think that that's like why you can't kind of prove the intended time scope of this, like by like, because there's a lot of like intended subtext, like missing time between scenes, kind of things.
But yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, that they then just kind of walk off. It snows, and then that's where it ends, right? Or do they? I always get that scene, and then the scene where they're throwing cards into the hat.
Yeah,
confused. I always get that confused with like which one.
So cards in the hat. The one that they actually like make it out of the loop you're referring to?
Which one is it that ends the loop?
That's after the party. She wins him in the
and then he
contest.
sculpts. That's when he does the sculpture of her, right? Or is that a different night?
I think that's a different night.
Okay, I know it's after the party. Yeah, she bids
so it's
for
like
him.
it's almost when he's not even trying anymore.
Okay,
and she wins him in the contest, and then they go home. And it's like when he's trying. It's almost when he's given up on that front.
Yeah,
and he's not really trying anymore.
He's now just experiencing life.
He's experiencing
for what it
life. He's fully enveloped in the town and just trying to make a better place for everybody in the town. It's when he's like fully in that bubble and like he's kind of freed from his old self.
Yeah.
Away. All the toxic qualities of his former personality.
Yeah, you paid top dollar for me.
Yeah. Anything new is good.
WrestleMania. Oh, that's one thing I wanted to bring up.
I don't remember that one.
No, it was where there's the young married couple that just got married.
Oh yeah, and it's all funny thing. The groom in that is what's his name? I gotta look it up.
It's Zod.
Michael Shannon.
Michael Shannon. But it's Zod. It's
Yeah.
I know. I couldn't believe it. I
caught on to that right around the time that premiered, because I was a huge fan of Road to Perdition at the time. And I was like, wait, and I wound it back, and I was like, how did I never notice that?
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's funny how in that scene they're
all calling him Dr. Connors.
Well, yeah,
because he saves Brian Doyle Murphy.
he gives them the tickets as a wedding present.
Yeah,
because like they both had cold feet or something.
Yeah.
And he got them tickets to WrestleMania. And he's like, oh, WrestleMania. Yeah. He's like, no way. We're going to be like in Pittsburgh anyway. I always laugh at that line because I'm like, WrestleMania, and it has never come to Pittsburgh.
No, it's a true sign that somebody was not a Pittsburghite.
But yeah, I just always find doesn't ruin the movie for me. I just think it's funny. Having grown up in Pittsburgh, that like, nope, never happened.
That's one of my favorite things too. Like just movies in general. Like when you live in a place,
there's some things you'll see through a little bit
more so than like the general populace aren't going to catch on.
But yeah, no, you can't say enough about.
Oh, it's one of those ones you can't. Like I said before, you cannot cover it in a short discussion. But I think it's one that goes beyond just making you laugh. It gives you a lot of life experience to think about.
Yeah.
And I think it's one that's it's very valuable viewing for not just like people who like to laugh, but people who like deep Buddhist level thinking. And I think that's where Harold Ramis' true charm is. I mean, like all those aforementioned movies make you touch on that level in some way. And I think that I think a good piece of writing can just make you shorthand laugh and giggle, but can also like test your foundations of understanding.
Oh yeah, it can always No, I feel like any good piece of art should comfort but challenge.
Yeah.
At the same time.
And get the insane kind of range out of either your Bill Murray or your Brendan Fraser or your Michael Keaton.
Yeah. No, I got to say, all of that is true. Like, he would definitely get the range out of the actors. Or like any movie that Ramis had his name sort of attached to, you're getting... Even we're bringing it up again, but even Ghostbusters, like as it's a full on comedy, but there are
that was a team effort.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters, like it, not to take anything away from Ivan Reitman, who like
no, not at all.
That whole thing falls apart without him. He set that insane schedule and somehow sold his soul to the devil to achieve getting it finished. But I mean that you have a team of writer, comedian, ultimate professionals.
You have lightning in a bottle.
Like that can't ever work with any other situation. Yeah. Like if the original intended team of Ghostbusters, it would not be the same movie.
No, yeah.
That's no shade on any of the original intended, like the Eddie Murphys and all that. Like there's no shade on that group, but I do. Maybe John Belushi brings something to the table, but different comedic energy that I don't think taps on the same buttons.
But yes, Groundhog Day, definitely one that belongs in the pantheon of stuff to go watch. What are your thoughts on how it's shot?
I think, honest to God, I think it's one of the best shot comedies.
Yeah, it's a
The opening sequence makes Pittsburgh what always bothered me was the backdrop in the newsroom of Pittsburgh looked so insanely frigid.
yeah.
Like Pittsburgh's maybe looked that cold maybe twice in my lifetime.
No,
the river point is like frozen over. Like, I can't tell you how many times that's happened through the course of the 90s to now. Like,
yeah, it's something. Again, I say this every time. I'm going to say it again. Here's another movie that I just don't know what it is, but it had the cadence of the scenes and the way it feels.
It's a perfectly
just
edited
hits
movie.
Differently to me.
Yeah.
Than newer movies. And I'm biased, fine.
Well, you know what
100%.
I think? You know what I think that is? We've talked about this a couple of times up till now. I think I've ruminated on it and gotten my finger on the button. I think that movies now are just expected to flow faster, even in production.
Is that yeah?
I think that's what it boils down to.
I guess I'm just not as big a fan of that as I am maybe because growing up with movies like this.
I always point my finger at The Thing because The Thing was allowed time in production more than like any other movie ever.
Yeah.
Because like they just let them do their thing. They were like left to go complete it at their leisure. They're like, just get us something usable. So, like I don't care how long it takes. Like just do it. But like they had all the time in the world. And I think movies didn't have that like breakneck pace in production that they do now. Now you're expected to like turn it around. And I'm like, it's not feasible. That's not like that doesn't allow air for the movie to breathe.
No, that's exactly the thing. Like I feel like movies don't breathe anymore as much.
They feel like they're being strangled.
Yeah,
you can feel it.
I feel like there's like I as the audience, the viewer, am not being given the time to properly feel the emotion that they want me to. Sometimes you need like those heads and tails on the scene to make it work, to just make it pop. And it's not a lot, but like but it's more like you got to get this scene over with so we can get more in here, and you need to have this so it adds to the universe, and we need these many people on TikTok to tick about it, and
I think a lot of people,
I don't know, that's something that I notice a lot now with especially like bigger tentpole movies, that cadence is the word, and it's not the right word I want to look, but the rhythm of it
I think
is very
that's why
different.
I think that's
whether
why
that's
like
good or bad,
one take films have become so popular. I think that's a big reason why, because it's kind of strong arming that real world pace into baking the pace of the real world into the film. And I think that's why that style, so like Birdman, basically anything by Emmanuel Lubezki's shooting. I think that post Children of Men, I think that's why that style is so popular, because it really is strong arming that pace into the edit. They have no choice but to deliver it at that speed.
Yeah,
and it's a tough thing to get anymore because it costs so much just to even have a camera, like even digital film, whatever. It's just even having people in a room is extremely costly. And
there's a savoriness, like when you want to savor something when you're eating. Yeah, that is lost on a lot of movies I watch now. Yeah, it's just I don't know, maybe just because I'm getting older, but
there's a larger conversation for this for another time. But I think that's film formats, like things being too clean, like not like there's all kinds of elements that go into modern filmmaking not being as, and it's not just, I've noticed it's not just film too. Some of the newer books I've read, they're good, they're well written, but they don't even hold a candle to some
of the older like classics. Like, just in my opinion, again, who am I? I'm just some idiot talking on a microphone right now. But
well, it largely depends on the book. There's something.
It's subjective, yes. There's a subjective thing.
I think there's
here.
something to like sifting through the mass amount of content, like where there's more content coming out per day.
Yeah.
Like books, media of all kinds.
Like that elbow room, I guess. A lot of stories now, even books, I've noticed, like, they're not giving them that room to just kind of just be for a minute. Yeah. Kind of like what Groundhog Day is.
Literally the opening shot through the credits is open air.
Yeah.
There's a very, very vast feeling of openness to this otherwise somewhat closed down story. Like, it takes place in one small town. I mean, it's not covering the Serengeti. It's just one small area, but it's still like you can feel the openness of it. And the atmosphere. Yeah. There's a lot to that. And I think that's partly why this movie really stands the test of time, is like it is a perfectly paced edit. It is shot beautifully. Yeah. The chaotic nature of the production schedule was handled very well, as best we can understand from an outside perspective. and its principles are all very sound and provocative. And
Yeah.
I think it hits on so many different cylinders to keep an audience's interest and to really give you something to think about. And if nothing else, you get a few solid laughs out of it.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But you don't get gems like that every day.
No, you don't.
And I think it proves that it is a classic.
Yes. Don't mess with my brain. Not now. Not after
Phil
Not after
Phil Connors.
Not after Chinese dinner.